Good morning, everybody, and it is my distinct pleasure to have all of you here today, and welcome to the 500 people that dialed online, and really welcome you here. I'm super excited to be here to launch this first the ION Innovation Summit, and with a few people in the room, and the rest of you out there still in the Zoom room, so really excited about this. After 16 months of working from home, it's really refreshing and exciting to really be back in person, talk to people in 3 dimensions, and engage in conversation. And this is really the ethos of what we're doing here, really building that networking coalition place that we're wanting to be part of. And hosting this first event, which is really sort of 2 new things. We are first in the building, and secondly, it's actually a new series we're launching. My name is Jan Odegaard. I'm the Executive Director of the ION. And it's my pleasure to be here to host this. And I really want to do a huge thank you to Baker Botts for being the presenting partner for this event. So this is really exciting for this one. And the focus today is on the future of energy technology. So we're excited about that, very timely. We're in a time of change, and there's a lot of changes going on. A program like this takes a lot of time and effort to put together. And we've had a committee of people working tirelessly. A huge shout out to Melissa Ruth and her team at the Baker Botts, and to Alex and Serafina and the ION team to really step it up and put together an exciting program. And without that, as you know, it's always about behind the scene that really makes these things happen. And if you've been here, you would see the behind the scene today. We all got kind of fooled that we thought that producing an online event was getting up in the morning, putting up a nice shirt, and sitting in front of a TV screen. Well, there's a little bit more to it when we get in person. I also want to thank our sponsors, that have been very eager to support and be really committed to our vision and mission. And Baker Botts, Chevron, and Microsoft at the founding partner level, and then BP, Maersk Drilling, and Intel at the affiliate partner level. Without their commitment and support to our vision and mission, we could not bring you all this programming. So, with that, it's really, our vision is to accelerate innovation, connect communities, and our mission is to create inclusive and sustainable economic growth, not just here in Houston, but nationally. And we're really excited about what we're doing here in Houston in Midtown. The ION is a creative office space building, anchors 16 acres around us, which is an inclusive innovation hub in the Midtown of Houston. It is a new space-making project. The ION district will serve as a nucleus for Houston's innovation ecosystem, and it's surrounded by academic institutions, the downtown business district, and the Texas Medical Center, really at the epicenter of those major employment hubs. The ION offers 266,000 square feet of office space and mixed-use space. That ranges from office, co-working, prototyping, conferences, classrooms, and restaurants. Yes, restaurants are an important part of the innovation ecosystem. And this will be sort of the home of Houston's entrepreneurs, corporations, academic institutions, and community members. They will collaborate under one roof and drive those coalitions very intentionally and create opportunities. Today, we're really excited to be launching a new program series, as I mentioned, the ION Innovation Summit. As we move forward, we will host a number of these annually and really try to focus on very timely, critical issues in society. Today is about the energy transition and what's going on in that space. The program team that worked to put this together, I'm really excited to say that we're kicking off today's event with a fireside chat on how digitalization is transforming the energy sector, and it will be moderated by John Martin, for a managing partner at Baker Botts. But before we hand it over to them, we'll do a little bit of the rest of the morning, and then we'll get the fireside chat started. Joining John on the podium will be Barbara Berger, Vice President Innovation and President Technology Venture from Chevron, and then Daryl Willis, Corporate Vice President Energy Industry at Microsoft. Following the fireside chat, I will return to stage, and I will be joined by Brad Burke, the managing director of the Rice Alliance, to join me in a conversation about both what's going on in Houston in sort of tech and innovation. He's been part of it for 20 years. And also his new accelerator, Clean Energy Accelerator, that he just launched. And then we will be sort of wrap up the first inaugural event with a panel conversation moderated by Felix Phillips, partner at Baker Botts, joined by Alexina Jackson, Customer Innovation and Solution Lead at AES Next, Chad Brown, Managing Partner, BP Venture, John Berger, Founder and CEO, Sonova Energy Corporation, and Trevor Best, CEO of Syzygy Plasmonics Incorporated. But let's get the summit on the road. This is not about me and the message. I've shared enough. I want to hear from the experts. So it's a pleasure for me to introduce John Martin. John Martin is the managing partner of Baker Botts and is based in the firm's Palo Alto office. Baker Botts is a leading energy and technology law firm, and John is the first managing partner in the firm's 180-year history with deep roots in Texas that is based outside of Texas. So John, great to have you here at the ION today, and the fireside is all yours. John?
Thank you, Jan. It's great to be here today from the ION Live here in Houston, the energy capital of the world. As Jan said, I'm managing partner of Baker Botts. And Jan also mentioned that this year we are celebrating our 181st year as a law firm. We have deep roots here in Texas. We started early on in the energy sector, but we expanded well beyond that. We have a deep bench of talent in the technology sector as well. In fact, in the technology sector, the range of our clients range from the largest world-known technology companies down to entrepreneurs, innovators, investors, startups, and every size company in between on all different phases. In fact, the clients that we serve are about evenly split between the technology and energy sectors in the law firm today. And I'm honored to be here today with the fellow founding partners of the ION, representatives from Chevron and Microsoft. And I'm eager to learn more about what they're doing with energy technologies to drive the energy transition to lead us to a cleaner, greener, low-carbon future. In fact, I feel right at home at the intersection of energy and technology. I started my career with Baker Botts many years ago here in the Houston office, and as John mentioned, I now live in Silicon Valley. I'm also proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with the ION, which is dedicated to access for all, lifting people up, helping our community in this vibrant and inclusive setting, supporting young entrepreneurs, and advancing diversity and inclusion. Joining us today, as Jan mentioned, are Barbara Berger from Chevron, who started as a research chemist and is now leading the drive in energy technology innovations. And also, as Jan mentioned, Daryl Willis from Microsoft, who has substantial knowledge of the global energy sector and has been instrumental in driving digital transformation across the sector. Barbara, Daryl, would you mind introducing yourselves?
Sure. Barbara Berger. I guess what I would tell the audience is I'm a three-coaster. So I was born on the East Coast. I was educated on the West Coast, and I worked for Chevron, which used to be Standard Oil of California. So I've spent a lot of time in the Bay Area. And now I'm a proud resident of the Third Coast, and glad to be here and glad to be a part of the ION community.
Hi everyone, I'm Daryl Willis. Started my career about 30 years ago as a geophysicist working for BP, and spent most of that time exploring for oil and gas in various places around the world, including the Gulf of Mexico and Vietnam and Angola and Russia. About 4 years ago, I transitioned from the oil and gas industry to the tech industry and spent a couple of years working for Google Cloud. And for the last 2 years, I've been leading the energy industry teams globally for Microsoft, and really happy to see everyone in person.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Daryl. Well, let's dive in. President Biden's Build Back Better plan has a strong imprint in terms of building sustainable infrastructure and clean energy. In the power sector, there's a goal to achieve a carbon-free power sector by 2035. With respect to buildings, the goal is to cut carbon footprint in buildings by half by 2035. In the auto industry, the goal is to become the leader, the global leader in manufacturing electric vehicles. And in innovation, the goal is to drive cost reductions in renewable energy and clean energy technologies. There is a lot of change in the air and a lot of ambitious goals being set. Baker Botts has a close affiliation with Rice University, and our good friend at Rice, Ken Medlock, who's the Baker Fellow with the Baker Institute of Public Policy, wrote just last month in a report, with respect to energy transition, it must be recognized that energy always transitions. And there is no single dimension that characterizes how things will unfold. The energy world looks very different today than it did 30 years ago in 1990. And it looked far more different 30 years prior to that in 1960. And it will look different 30 years from now in 2050. Digitalization is a big focus for the energy sector at the moment. And I'd love to hear from both of you. Barbara, we'll start with you in terms of what's Chevron kind of focused on at the moment in this space.
Well, thanks, John. I'm going to first step back and talk about the energy transition because you quoted Ken, and I think he's right. But I would start with, first of all, the energy system, because it's a system. So when you think about changes, it's not pull out one widget, pull another in. And so the transition we're going through is driven by trends and expectations, there will be a number of different things changing, as you said. So, demand continues to grow for energy, and access by all is certainly a universal expectation. It needs to be reliable. We've all gone through that. It needs to be affordable. We're very fortunate here in Texas that in general energy is affordable. And an expectation by all that it be ever cleaner. So, those are the principles. And it is a very complex and large energy system. And I define the energy system as those who produce and those who use. So it's all of us, right? At Chevron, we think a lot about this, and it's really front and center. We could talk about it all day long. But our work is driven by three key areas, and they're no different than any business. You got to run your base business well. You got to evolve your business, and you got to look for where there's new businesses, right? Because we're a leading player now, and we want to be a leading player in the future. And so we will decarbonize our current operations using a wide variety of technologies and operations and practices. We've set targets. I'll get back to that a little bit. And there's innovation that can be applied today, and then there's things we need to develop in order to do it tomorrow. So executing on that, we can integrate other forms of energy in to lower the carbon intensity of both our processes and products. And then we're also investing in technologies that aren't ready today, and helping the ecosystem to develop and scale those for future. So it's a classic case of an incumbent supplier, which is run what you do really well, look towards the future, and evolve to meet those ever-changing demands. There's a lot underneath that, but at the highest level, that is what Chevron's focused on.
Daryl, tell us about what Microsoft is doing with digital technology.
I'd love to, and I'd like to just reiterate something that Barbara said, because I think it's worth repeating. One of the things we think about at Microsoft, and one of the reasons we are kind of determined to continue to work with the energy industry, is because of the fact that the world continues to need access to energy, and it needs to be affordable and it needs to be clean. And we feel like in order to deliver on those three things, accessibility, affordability, and the cleanliness of energy, there's a role for companies like Microsoft to play. I also think about that in the context of some of what you offered, John, around the next 30 years. The other thing we realize is that over the next 30 years, there'll probably be 2.5 more billion people on the planet than there are today, something on the order of 10 billion people by 2050 on the planet. Much of that growth will occur in Asia and Africa. And having spent some time living in Africa, I've seen what it looks like when the energy system is challenged. And there's a role for us to play in making sure the growth that is created in the next 30 years is supported by companies like Microsoft and Chevron and others. We also kind of, to bring it back to Microsoft, realized that an important lever for the energy transition will be digital. And the elasticity of the cloud and the ability, especially now that there's sensors on everything, to assimilate all of that data, to integrate it and leverage insights from it is very, very important. And as we've kind of gone around the world, literally talking to oil and gas companies and power and utility companies and mining companies, we see the problems in 4 big buckets. 2 of those buckets are around running the operations you have, as Barbara suggested, that are the operations of today, running those operations well. And we talk about workforce transformation and operating for the future. How do you leverage data to make your business that you're running today safer, more efficient, and more reliable? And then the 2 other conversations we typically have with companies are around transition to clean and reimagining energy. What does it mean to run a smart grid? What does it mean to run a smart city? And how does data inform that? So those are the things that we're thinking about as we look towards the future and think about kind of how we can partner with the industry and better enable that future.
Daryl, let me come back to you. And both of you touched on this briefly. I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into this. In Microsoft's carbon negative pledge, there was a sentence there that I thought was spot on, which was, solving our planet's carbon issues will require technology that does not exist today.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the Climate Innovation Fund. Tell us about, maybe even start with the pledge, the carbon negative pledge by 2030 and 2050.
Got it. I'll actually start one step higher, if that's okay, because I think one of the things that attracted me to the role at Microsoft was Microsoft's mission around empowering every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. And I think one of the things we realized is that energy is fundamental to everything we do. It's the one thing that everyone loves to hate, but everyone needs. Nothing works without energy. And as much as we think about energy as a vertical industry in Microsoft, it's got a strong horizontal component that's required for healthcare and financial services, et cetera. But to come back to your question, when we think about we made a big commitment back in January of 2020, and we said that by 2030 we would be net zero, and that by 2050 we will remove all of the carbon we've put into the environment since Microsoft was founded in 1975. Those are big, bold, ambitious targets. And to be candid, it's going to require us doing everything we can to deliver on those targets, but there's a lot of what needs to be done that has not been created yet in terms of technology, which is why we're sitting here at the ION, and which is why we're part of innovation incubators like Greentown Labs, because we realize that this is a big, complicated thing that everyone loves to talk about, this energy transition, but it's hard. And most companies we talk to can see their way to half of the ambition that they have, but the other half requires technology and partnership and innovation that has not been created. That said, we've also, back in that 2020 timeframe, created a $1 billion innovation fund to really make sure we're investing in those organizations and companies and startups and minds that are thinking about the future in new and innovative ways. The biggest, craziest, hardest ideas are the ones we want to fund because we believe those will be the most transformational. And there's a lot of work to do. And I guess the last point I'd make is that and I'll probably harp on this a lot over the course of this panel, is partnership is so key. Partnership is so key. And being around people who are thinking about things in innovative and unique ways is important. So important.
Well, Microsoft even calls this is the moonshot.
Moonshot,
effort.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Barbara, Chevron Technology Ventures, you head that up. You're investing in a number of different types of businesses. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure, and I want to just follow on one thing about the partnership and relay back to the digital, because I think this is an important part. We run the current energy system with agreed set of standards. We know, typically because it's a commodity business, you want to run it efficiently. We all know that 99 cents is less than 101, and we know how to count and everything. If we're going to go to a lower carbon future, we need to be able to count carbon and count it in the same way and have good standards. And so, collaboration between tech companies and the producers and the users in this whole transparency and standards around carbon. That's another whole piece of this. And if we don't get that right, there isn't going to be confidence that the innovation, the scale, the investments that are being made are actually contributing to a lower carbon future. And so that's an underlying set of challenges that we're all taking on, and they're ones that really matter, but maybe don't get all the highlight and headlines. Tech Ventures, so we're the longest standing oil and gas corporate venture player. In 1999, some pretty smart people at Chevron said, wow, we're an incumbent company. They might not have used that terminology. How do we ensure that we have a clear sight to what's happening outside of our bubble and that we can access it? And we can access it to be able to use it. We can access it to learn. We can access it to help us shape our strategies or our actions. I credit the people that brought that to bear. We've been in existence for 21 years now, 22 years. Invested well over 100 companies. Proud to say that over 80% of them, we found some way to try what they have in our operation, somewhere in the Chevron enterprise. So we've got great collaboration inside the company. And, we're looking at the trends of innovation. We're looking at, fundamental belief that we need more innovation, not less, because the challenges that we see going forward require new technology, new business models, new thinking. And so we want to foster that innovation. But innovation that can't scale is kind of interesting, but it doesn't matter. And so we also help those companies through trial and then work to scale not only the supply of the technology, but the demand for it. So we're on about our 8th fund. We talk about funds because that's the way the venture capital world works. We just launched our 2nd future energy fund, but I just wanted to talk about the 2 funds that we have because I think they describe really how we're thinking about it in Chevron. They're called Core and Future because we give them simple names so people understand what they are. Core says we have a core business and we want to improve it and strengthen it going forward. And so it starts from that. And whether it's operations in the field, whether it's workflows across our organization, or whether it's decarbonizing the assets. And so there's innovation in those spaces. And the second one, Future, is where you start with the future energy system and you look at things that you believe will play a prominent role in that future energy system. And those are the ones where, they're not ready for scale yet. So you're not only envisioning a technology, but even new value chains, and how do you bring them to scale? So partnering with infrastructure players, policymakers and stuff on those. And so the complement of the two is really what Chevron's looking at today and in the future.
And it really is the development, commercialization, and scaling of that. It's every aspect of that.
And getting that right is going to take a lot of partnership. And the interesting thing, the thing that keeps, I think, people like me really excited about it is no one's done it before. And so the answers to what you do require a lot of creativity, collaboration, and trying new things.
And agility, because you don't have a line of sight to kind of where this may be headed in many instances.
That's right.
We are experiencing daily, maybe almost hourly right now, the emerging from this 100-year pandemic. Life is starting to get back to normal. Earlier this year at CERAWeek, a statement was made that the pandemic has forced companies to cram 5 years worth of digital acceleration into roughly 10 months. Talk a little bit, if you could, about how this pandemic has altered kind of your view of the investment landscape, or your view of kind of the digital transformation and the energy transition. What's the impact of the pandemic then?
You want me to start?
Yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah, so it's a fascinating question. we kind of talk about the pandemic as being the chief innovative officer for the industry, because the industry has been forced to do things that it thought impossible. And you mentioned the 5 years and 10 months. One of the things our CEO, Satya Nadella, said early on in the course of the pandemic was that we saw 2 years worth of innovation in the first 2 months of the COVID-19 crisis. And that was really because companies were forced to do things that they thought were impossible, around having entire organizations working from home for months, what we thought would be weeks and then months and then over a year. Some very interesting things were done around automation and autonomous systems. And again, the crisis forced the acceleration of these things and this belief, and I was guilty of it myself, in thinking that in order for me to do business, I needed to fly on a plane to Abu Dhabi for 2 days or fly to Melbourne for 3 days. And there are times when you need to be on site, and there are times when you can transact business just as effectively using some of the technologies that have been developed. And I think that we'll see a world going forward that is more hybrid and less traditional than it once was. And you'll see, we believe at Microsoft, you see working in the office is the exception and not necessarily the rule in some cases. And in many cases, employees will make that request to come into the office by exception versus working from home by exception. And that's kind of, that's been what we've seen so far. I think that when I look to the future, I believe that the world will never be the same. And I think that digital has arrived and is here to stay. I believe that many people talked about digital because it was a cool topic to talk about, digital transformation, but I think that there are more believers now. And people see the value that data can bring and the insights that can be delivered through data. And I don't believe that it's a fad. I don't think it's going to go anywhere anytime soon. The last thing I'd say is that I believe that this pandemic is actually accelerating not only digital, but also accelerating the energy transition. As I think about what's happening in the oil and gas sector and companies being more ambitious and aggressive about their targets around net zero, as I think about what's happening with the decarbonization of the grid or the desire to decarbonize the grid. And even as I think about the mining industry and the realization that an energy transition cannot be delivered without mining. And so sustainable mining and how mining companies mine for the components that are required for solar panels and EVs, et cetera, is all a part of the conversation. And digital is at the center of it. And I think if there was a gift out of this COVID crisis for the industry, it was just a push towards net zero, I think a lot sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm. Barbara, any views on the impact of the pandemic?
Sure. You said it was 100 years. I mean, I think it was 15 or 16 months, but it did seem longer. So this is my first in person. Daryl and I were talking, we've been on screen together a lot in the last year. It is nice to see you.
It is nice to see you.
So when I think about the early days, the question I got was, are you going to stop investing? Okay, that was what we got in the early days. And the wonderful thing about, consistency of purpose is, no, we're going to stay the course. Mm-hmm. A big company like Chevron looked at, our self-help, looked at our situation. We don't, we take a long-term view on things. And even as an investor, we took a long-term view. Our portfolio companies did, self-help. They understood what was happening to them. They understood how to change how they worked and so forth. And that's where we started. And there was a little bit of a lull last March and April. We tried to understand the new rules, at least as we knew them. Mm-hmm. And then things accelerated. So staying the course was where you started, and then it accelerated, both in terms of the investment process, the pace of investment, the pace of collaboration, and the almost impatience for progressing the development of technology. So what seemed like it was a good enough pace a year ago is no longer a good enough pace. Now, I think where we started the pandemic is also where we're coming right now. And, we said we're going to stay the course, we're going to watch how things work, we're not going to make dramatic changes overnight. I think that's what we also need to do coming out of it. And we were just talking about employees going back to work and people are excited to see each other. I mean, people truly work for a place where they like the other people that they work with. We're social beings, we collaborate. But we've found some things we really like about this flexibility. And so I think we will be best served if we don't do the herky-jerky on the coming back out, just like we had to be quite flexible on the way in. So, you know, innovation happens when the status quo looks like it needs to be disrupted and changed. And so the pandemic was a great, venue for doing that.
Barbara, I want to come back to a comment you touched on, and I want to just unpack it a little bit further. It's the importance of partnerships. You know, internally within Baker Botts, one of the things that we clearly have experienced during the course of these last 15 months is just a step change in our collaboration across departments, across offices, across historical, traditional boundaries. And what we're experiencing today is totally different than where we were, even just 15 months ago. And Chevron and Microsoft have collaborated in the past on a number of occasions. Talk about, in the context of energy transition, in the context of digital transformation, the importance of collaborating, partnerships. Just talk about, places like the ION itself.
Yeah.
This is a manifestation of this concept. But just talk about the importance of that kind of in this field of energy transition.
Sure, and it's many layers, but if I think about the energy transition, it's an energy system, which is a whole bunch of value chains that look like spaghetti and, cross over each other. Everyone is being impacted by the energy transition, and they're trying to figure out, so how does this change my business? And so your suppliers, might be changing in a way that you continue to work supplier to customer. Your suppliers could be investors in a project, co-development. Your suppliers could be your competitors. The very nature of venture capital, which I think is why I really enjoy it, you invest as a syndicate. A set of co-investors. On the Future Fund, we have over 200 co-investors. There are companies that look just like us. There are companies that look nowhere near like us. There are high net worth individuals. There are financials. There are institutional investors that are coming down to get innovation early. And so it's actually the diversity of those investors that make for a more supportive structure around that startup. If they all just look like us, then we're all bringing the same tools. So I think we're all realizing that we can't solve this alone. We need collaboration. We're a little awkward, like the 8th grade dance, that we don't always know how to work with new players. But I think the environment is ripe to start having those conversations.
That's awesome.
May I say a few words
Please,
on that?
I'd
Because I love that question. I want to answer it too, because I think that this energy transition is incredibly complicated. It's easy to talk about it, but it's going to be really, really hard to deliver it. And partnership is so key. I think about the relationship we have with Chevron. I think about the relationship we have with Schlumberger. And I think about the relationship we have with Chevron and Schlumberger. And I also think about relationships we've got with companies like Shell and BP and Repsol and the Australian market operator on the utility side. And I think about the ecosystems. And we just recently talked about a relationship with BHP. All of those are important. And what's interesting about all of those relationships is that companies are coming to us and saying, we want to partner with you in a unique way. It's not just about, can you provide us with Outlook and hardware? We want to work with you on big, hard problems. And we're excited about that because you're interested in decarbonization like we are as an industry. So it creates a unique opportunity for us to come together and figure out how to trust each other, where a Chevron will bring all of its capability and strength to the table, and Microsoft brings its capability and strength to the table, and we both work on what we're good at and not try to get in each other's way. I think about this building and what it will mean to this region, what it will mean to this city. And so, and how it will be, I think, an enabler for helping Houston on the mayor's journey around becoming the energy transition capital of the world. I think it will start from a place like the ION with support and partnership with the Greentown Labs, which is across the street, which is so important. I mean, I think the thing I'm most excited about is the fact that the industry has evolved and it is a lot more open to working across traditional lines. Because when I think about my time in the industry, we always wanted to try to do everything ourselves and not solve using solutions from other industries or from other companies. And I think the future is so different. I was with a board of a company a couple of weeks ago, and I said to them, if you try to take this on by yourself, you will fail. You've got to figure out who to partner with. If you don't,
Right.
They asked me, what's the one piece of advice I would give them? I said, you've got to figure out who to partner with. You can't do it by yourself.
And with digitalization, it actually brings in a number of new issues. One would be the whole area of cybersecurity and privacy and those topics. You know, say a few words, if you would, on that. Let's start with you, Daryl.
I would say that, you know, from our perspective at Microsoft, again, I think about my time, I constantly reference the oil and gas industry because I spent over half my life in it. But I think about what gave us our license to operate in the oil and gas industry was safety and operational risk, not doing things that would harm lots of people or damage the environment in any form or fashion. And when I think about Microsoft, the thing that is most important to us and the thing that we worry about the most is data protection, data security on a daily basis. It forms the basis for our license to operate with the industry. And for us, we talk a lot about the importance of building and establishing trust with industries, all industries, frankly. And for us, it's all around how we run our data centers, how we protect them, and how we protect the data of the companies that we're working with. That's the thing that keeps us up at night, and that frankly keeps us in strong relationships with companies around the world.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I'll just add one more thing. I spent, I don't know, 2/3 of my career faced with the problem of scarcity. Well, scarcity of information. I don't know if any of you were analysts, but you really were data collectors. And the amount of time you actually had to analyze was very small compared to the amount of time you were to generate and collect data. And now we're going to this, we're going to the flip side, which is data abundance. And it's a good thing in terms of being able to optimize. We can do things across these energy value chains that we never thought we could do. We can have massive sort of decentralized systems and so forth, all because of that. But it has to be protected.
Yeah.
It brings up other issues. And so, you know, I just think that's a big trend that we have in the system and allowing us to really change all aspects of this energy system. But it's obviously spawns other industries and other businesses that need to protect us.
We started this session by my quoting from Ken Medlock's report from last month. Talked about how energy is always in transition, how the energy sector will look very different in 30 years than it does today. Let's kind of bring it back to the ION. Baker Botts is very proud to be a founding partner of the ION. I know Chevron is, I know Microsoft is. As you think about the future, as you think about, let's set aside 30 years, just 5 years from now, what would you like to look back on and think about, you know, this is what I'm glad we achieved here at the ION? What is it that you are hopeful about coming out of this innovation ecosystem here in Houston and the ION that would be something we could all be proud of? Barbara?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm very proud of the fact that Chevron has been a supporter of the ION and supporter of energy innovation and innovation broadly in Houston. You know, I think about the ION, I think about it, a physical space where you could come, a little bit like the Cheers bar where everyone knows your name. It's hopefully a set of programs, and this is one of the early ones, but where you can come and learn. And it's going to be a community where, you know, you're going to come and you're going to see people you know you're going to look for business, business opportunities with them. So for me, 5 years out, I hope we really do bring that community together. We've got to do innovation inclusively in Houston. That is like one of the guardrails. And so that people from all different parts of Houston can be a part of this. For Chevron, it's not just about the Tech Ventures team understands how to collaborate in the external ecosystem. That's our job. But I hope it also gives all Chevron employees, we have some 8,000 here in Houston, a view that the world is not contained within the buildings that we call our office, but you can do business broad, and that they find it's easier to establish relationships with companies and individuals that are very different to us. And for Houston, keeping a city dynamic, keeping a city fresh, it's about talent, it's about being the energy transition capital, the energy capital of the future, not of the past and the present, or not just of the past and present. So I think we all got a lot riding on this innovation ecosystem, and I hope that the ION is a force of nature in propelling this forward.
Hard to
Daryl?
add anything to that, Barbara. I would say that my hope is that in 5 years' time, this area truly begins to become what the medical center has become and what the energy corridor has become in terms of being the innovation center for Houston and, frankly, for energy. So I'm really excited about the potential and the possibility of that. I think the second thing I'm really excited about is I believe that given some of the ambitious targets you laid out that the administration currently has in the U.S., I believe that this ION and this innovation corridor could be a best practice. It could be the place to come to see what it looks like to watch real-time innovation and collaboration occurring around one of the biggest and hardest problems facing humanity, which is this whole challenge around energy transition. And I guess the third thing I would say is that my hope is that in 5 years' time, it'll be hard to get into this place. It'll be just, full of people and full of ideas, and that's exactly why we want to be here, because the more ideas, the merrier, and the bigger shot we've got at delivering on this challenge around 2050 and net zero.
Well, Barbara, Daryl, thank you so much for being with us today. I know our broader teams at MakerBots, at Microsoft, at Chevron, we all look forward to working with one another. In achieving this vision for the ION and the broader innovation ecosystem here in Houston. But this has been an excellent discussion today.
Hey, thanks, John, for moderating.
You bet.
Thank you so much.